I've tried to film this video over 15 times. I am not exaggerating, and I was unhappy with those videos because I was unable to encompass every scenario, every situation, and every nuance to answering this question. So at the end of the day, you have to navigate all of these videos and everything yourself regardless, and figure out for yourself, is it ethical to do or is it not? Because I'm not going to be able to cover every situation, scenario, and circumstance in this video, but I'm going to do my best to try. So all of that being said, the ethics with love magic really starts with the way it's done and the intention. I'm sure there's more factors, but those are the first two that come to mind. The way it's done, or the type of spell that it is, matters because some spells are baneful and some are quote-unquote white magic. The baneful and binding ones are typically unethical to do. Of course, there's certain situations or consensual situations where it's mutually agreed upon, or it's understood, or it's acceptable. That's for the person doing it to navigate. And of course, the intention always matters, because you can do a quote-unquote really good, nice, harmless spell, but also have bad intentions for it. Like, it might be unnecessary to do a love spell and someone is just deciding to do it anyways. By the way, the easy answer to whether or not love magic is ethical is yes and no, because there's different factors, different situations where different things are acceptable, quote-unquote acceptable, and understandable. What matters the most right now is getting on the same page, at least with ethics, morals, and values. I'm sure there's different lessons on it, but for the sake of us being on the same page so we can just continue this video, ethics, morals, and values, as a quick, easy example, is, for instance, it's unethical to kill someone. Completely unethical to kill people. However, if there is an intruder who is coming in to kill your family, morally speaking, probably going to want to kill them before anybody else gets hurt. You have to make that decision for yourself, and that all depends on your ethics, morals, and value. If there's an intruder coming in to kill kids, people are most likely going to kill that intruder before they can hurt anybody. That's probably the best outcome. However, other people may see that differently. There may be different circumstances, different situations, different nuances, in which case y'all going to have to navigate that on your own. Everything is circumstantial, and it's always dependent on your own ethics, morals, values, and your virtue. Don't try to, obviously, don't try to bend anything to fit your agenda. Basically, find justifications and excuses to fit this all into your agenda, but at the end of the day, we'll know what's right and what's wrong. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you guys examples on times where I've seen certain types of love spells be ethical to do, when in general it's probably not ethical to do. But before we even get into all of that, we're going to talk about the different types of love magic. Free will. For centuries, thousands of years, I think it's been mutually agreed upon that taking over and dominating someone's free will is unethical. That's why we've all heard it growing up. That's why pretty much everybody knows that, even though some people are skeptics and non-believers, because we've heard it in movies and stories and myth and history, and you're gonna hear it again now here in this video. Free will is basically choice. It's freedom. It's a divine right that we are given, or some would call it a God-given right. Yeah, it'd be unethical to take somebody else's free will away, but the thing about us gaining and getting and also having free will is that we do have the power to influence other people's free will, as with all things in this reality that are influencing. That being understood, affecting someone's free will or dominating someone's free will being considered unethical, we can basically get into the meat. There's some very light love spells like honey jars, but those don't really work as well, right? And I think this is because free will is very difficult to control. It's actually very hard to dominate and take over someone's free will, which is why love spells sometimes need to completely change a person before they get them to come. If the person had their own free will, had their own choices, and could make their own choices, they would choose not to be with. Before I continue explaining the rest of these love spells and the types of love spells, I'm going to first let you guys know that I'm going to be talking about them from the angle of me doing it. Some of the examples I'm going to use, like binding, for instance, I'm going to talk about it as if I'm the one doing the binding spell, because it's just going to make things a lot easier to explain. There's multiple different types of baneful love spells, my opinion. There's binding ones, there's clauses, and then there's domination spells. First, we're going to start with binding. If I were to bind someone to me, that would be binding their energy energetic cords, paths, their other connections all to me. I am getting all of the cords and I am in control of all of the cords, and they are connected straight to me. So what that does is it closes off other options, other paths, and other opportunities. It makes your pull a lot stronger, a lot stronger. However, they still have capability to break away from it. Binding cords, like, energetically binds you two together, and this can physically manifest as two people basically becoming codependent on each other, having like leases and all that kind of stuff in each other's names, which become like physical contracts and cords that are hard to get rid of. Usually when binding spells are done, a cord cutting is necessary. Of course, there are binding spells that are okay, especially when it's consensual, and marriage and hand fastings are actually binding spells that are consensual. And marriage and hand fastings basically tie different cords together. That's a lot different than a lot of love binding spells that people do, because love binding spells that people do create new cords of connection, or they tie cords together, they strengthen cords, they build on the cords, they add more cords. It's all stuff like that. But marriage and hand fastings in particular are literally just tying each other's already existing energetic cords together. The other type of binding spell that I'm talking about, where like I'm binding someone to me, it's a love binding, that closes off other options. So if they're trying to talk to other females, or for instance, like if they are trying to cheat, then that binding would prevent them from doing so by creating obstacles or having random obstacles pop up, as well as other resistance. Some people find that unethical, some people find it ethical. Again, it is dependent on the circumstance, situation, and that is not on me to navigate. That is on the person casting it. The other type of love spell that I want to talk about are the hex clauses, or the clause. The clauses are like, for instance, love me or suffer, return to me or suffer, or whatever the heck it might be. But there's so many different types of clauses, like do what I say or despair. But for this example, let's use the love me or suffer one. So again, free will is very hard to control. The thing about doing a love me or suffer spell, say I do a love me or suffer spell on someone, that person could very well choose not to love me and very well choose to suffer instead. So what I would have done in that situation is make them suffer and ruin their life for no reason. This is why clause spells are kind of iffy. Clause spells are for people who are literally like out for some blood, and at that point they don't really usually care about the person as a person. They don't care if they're hurting or not. In that situation, someone's purposely not choosing you, so why would you want to waste energy or time on that? I do like to only work on love spells when the communication between two people are already open, or there's some kind of already open existing connection and relationship there. Otherwise, I don't want to waste my time or my energy focusing on someone who actually doesn't want to be with a client. Personally, I don't have time to spend that much energy and time on a love spell. Love me or suffer type spells really don't always work, and if anything, I think they work counterintuitively, because a lot of the times the person will either choose to suffer, or they end up suffering so much that, like, even if you were to go back with them, you would literally pick up the energy from that baneful magic, and it just creates a whole mess. Like, if you want to be with someone, you're not going to do a love me or suffer spell, because once you get them, you're gonna suffer too energetically. So as I've already said before, dominating someone's free will is actually very difficult. I think at best most love spells are influencing someone's free will. Actually very difficult to do, because you have to know how the person thinks, you have to know what to target, you have to be able to change their mind around. We're talking about all of these spells in the context that the person doesn't want to choose me with their free will, so it's going to take a lot more work. With someone's free will, like if there is a possibility or a chance that they want to be with you, that's in the back of their head and it's actually an option, then yeah, like these love spells will all probably work really well and fairly easily. But if they don't actually love you, they don't want you, or they won't want you in the future, this is basically going to be like fighting an uphill battle. Like if you have to do love magic to begin with, you're most likely always going to have to do maintenance, what I call maintenance spells, as in you're always going to have to retouch it, and at some point they start to build a tolerance to the love magic that you do if you do the same kind. So then you're gonna have to start using different kinds, and starts to become a rabbit hole from there. Domination spells are actually really hard because they can end up changing a person entirely, because if a person doesn't want to choose to love you and you try to dominate them and it doesn't work. You end up having to change the way they think, the way they move, the way they eat, their beliefs, the way they think, what they find attractive. Like, that's all actually really hard to change because those are all inherent things that are programmed within us. And free will is actually very powerful in the sense that it's very hard to suppress. People's inner desires are always coming out and they're always going to show. Back to the domination spells. That is like the last type of baneful type of love magic that I'm going to speak about. Domination spells cannot be done very easily unless the person is already inclined to being the way that you want to make them. That's the last one. Domination spells are completely considered unethical just because you're completely dominating and controlling someone's free will, taking away their choices and their ability to act on those things. For instance, like with all of these spells, the binding, the clauses, and the domination spell, you can make someone suffer. It's seen as pretty unethical because you're basically pigeonholing someone into a choice. Or like, for instance, like some types of love spells will continuously take their choices and options away by either putting blockages there or creating conflict, tension, whatever, in their other relationships and interactions, which then cause them to only have you as an option, in which case they're not truly choosing you, are they? Now we're going to talk about the good love spell. The one that is always going to be a good love spell, and that is obviously attraction magic and attraction spells. Why are attraction spells good? Because attraction spells work on me, on you. So, for instance, if I do an attraction spell, it's a spell that I do on myself. I'm not doing a spell on anybody else. Of course, it can influence or affect other people, but it's not completely controlling or taking away their free will. That means if someone doesn't actually like me, even if I have the attraction spell on, that doesn't mean they'll come to me. So they might find me attractive, they might find me glamorous or enchanting because of the spell that is on me, but that doesn't mean that they will come to me or choose to come to me. And in that way, they get to keep their free will. That's also why I offer the hot attraction oil down below, and I stopped offering love spell candles in particular because, one, again, it's a lot of work. It's different for every circumstance and every situation. There is no one size fits all love spell, but there are a lot of love spells that you can use for different types of situations. But again, people grow a tolerance to it. Attraction magic is some of the best type of like love spell that you can do because it's mainly working on you and playing off of the already existing attractions are already there. It's already playing off of the existing chemistry that you might already have with someone. Attraction magic is really cool because it does attract a lot of people, but the thing about attraction magic as well is that it can attract people who aren't serious. It doesn't always attract the perfect soulmate or the perfect person, but it does attract a lot of people. It brings a lot of attention. It brings a lot of excitement and passion into your lives. Of course, again, it depends on the type of attraction spell that you're crafting. You can try to craft spells where, you attract multiple different soulmates to choose from, but the difficulty in that is that depending on the area that you're in and the people you're around or how many people are around you or how many people you talk to, sometimes it can be hard to bring multiple different like perfect candidates in. So sometimes some people won't fit every description, but it is possible to bring them in. And again, you guys still have to get to know each other. You guys still have to talk. With the other love spells, they can move very fast, and that step can sometimes be unnecessary. But with attraction magic, things can move very hot and heavy, but at some point there will have to be real work done if it's going to continue into a serious relationship. And of course, this is typically willingly. So for the last part of this video, I'm just going to talk about the people who I've seen benefit from love spells. One of the people that I knew, childhood friends that I had, he wanted me to meet his friend because his friend's wife was doing love spells on him. Openly, by the way, she told everybody, including his friends. So when I met this guy, I was like, oh, so your wife's a witch? And he's like, yeah, she's actually a hairdresser. When they last went to Vegas, I guess she called them and said, you're so lucky I don't have your hair right now. Because she usually always has his hair and is able to do other types of spells. He's hanging around some of my childhood friends, which are pretty crazy party boys. So I could tell that, he's kind of a party boy at heart, but he was behaving really well. I asked him like, hey, since your wife started doing spells on you, have you become like a better man do you think? And he's like, I would say so. And I was like, do you think you've become like a better husband? And he's like, yeah, I think so. Do you actually want to get up and work every day? And he's like, yeah, because before the spells, you didn't want to work every day, huh? And he's like, no. And I was like, you were probably lazy, huh? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, and you're working now? And you want to work now? And he's like, yeah, I do. I really do want to work now because I want to take care of my kids. And I was like, well, do you think any of that's bad? And he's like, no. Okay, yeah, I think you're fine. I don't need to do anything. I don't want to do anything. Like, you're a better person, a better dad, and a better husband because of these spells on you. So we don't have to do any, especially if you're happy. And he was happy. But admittedly speaking, as someone who has been under a love spell, when you're under a love spell, usually you don't want to come out of it. And you don't know that you want to come out of it until like after. But since I've been under a love spell more than 2 times now, it's always about being in touch with yourself. But anyways, that's for a different video. So yeah, this guy is a better person because of the love spells that his wife was doing on him. And the love spells that she was doing on him, some of them were definitely baneful. She definitely did binding spells, and she probably does claws spells, and I'm sure she actually does spells to make him suffer too if he messes up, but that's besides the point. We're going to talk about the next situation. And the next client that I had, she was pregnant. She and her husband agreed to have children, and he suddenly became very, very abusive. Of course, he had anger issues before, but he became a lot more abusive. She was pregnant. She had nowhere to go. She has no money. She can't work. We decided to do a love spell with understanding in it. It was a bit binding. She is still with him today. They are actually doing very well now. He actually understands her now. He listens to her now, and he's basically on the road to improving, because the thing about love spells, if someone is angry, if someone is an addict, if someone has some kind of like personality flaw, that's part of it. It's going to take more than a love spell to have them change that. Like, they have to want to change that on their own. So if this guy was angry, I'm going to obviously do spells that like trigger him to immediately be better, but also at the same time trigger him to be able to reflect. The thing about this is where free will comes into play. They're able to reflect and they're calmed down for the moment, so they can choose from that moment if they want to work on themselves or not and work on getting better. You can use love spells to make someone recognize like, oh, I should probably do this for someone that I love, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And I think that's the thing with all of these love spells, is that you can do whatever you want, but it doesn't mean that people are going to do it. Free will is something very hard to control. There's so many nuances to it. If you have to do a lot of love spells to begin with, you probably are not going to be happy having to do this forever. You know what? To each their own. I understand different circumstances, different situations. Always navigate things with your ethics, morals, and your values, because some circumstances are fine and others are not. Hopefully that answers enough questions. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching.